Hey everybody, welcome to Drive Thru Board Game Blog number 25. This is for April 3rd, 2014, and today I'm going to kind of take a little bit of a different tack with my blogging thing here. Recently I've been doing playthroughs of Myth and Galaxy Defenders, and also did reviews of those a few weeks ago. And I kind of have been promising some folks and whoever that I would do like a comparison, because they're kind of similar in that same sort of cooperative dungeon crawl, shoot 'em up kind of board games. I do get into a lot of detail at the end of each of the walkthroughs, kind of comparing the two of them. I will talk a little bit more about it today, but kind of in the context of this blog's topic, which is the top 10 board games for video gamers. And so I already have an issue with that title, because two things. One is it's not a top 10 like 10 through 1. It's basically 5 groups of 2 games apiece. And the groups are not really in any order because it's just different groups for different things. I do have a favorite out of each group. So one of the categories has Galaxy Defenders and Myth in it. And I'll tell you, Galaxy Defenders right now is winning in that category. So I'll do 5 groups of 2, and they kind of fit different types of video games. Now, I've been kind of keeping my eye on some video game journalism and things in the past couple of weeks, because I've used to play video games a lot, and kind of in between some board game stints. So if you go back like 4 or 5 years, I was playing mostly video games. If you go back a few years before that, I was playing mostly board games, and then blah 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 whatever. So I used to play a lot of video games that don't really anymore. But I have been playing a lot of Age of Wonders 3, which is kind of a Heroes of Might and Magic, almost like a fantasy Civ game, but it's not really a Civ game. It's kind of more of a 4X with a lot more focus on combat and stuff. But really like that one. That's kind of been a game that got me excited. It's the first video game in a while that's got me really excited. So anyway, I've been keeping my ears open and seeing what sort of board game or video game reviewers have been thinking about that, because the term video gamer to me is meaningless, just like the term gamer is pretty much meaningless. So there's a lot more indie games and things like that now, which are kind of like Super Mario Brothers rehashes or something. I don't know. Some of them are cool. My point is that the term video gamer is not, it's going to be stereotypical and bad, and the games that are going to fall into this category are going to be geared towards that bad stereotype of video gamers. But it's going to be kind of like the hardcore video gamer, whatever that means, applied to them. So that's kind of what this is about. Just a first kind of honorable mention before I jump into this top 10 is David Serlin, who is a guy that is designed or coded or balanced or something, I think some Street Fighter games, and also Puzzle Fighter, which is amazing. Puzzle Fighter is awesome. If you haven't played Puzzle Fighter, I think you can get it on PC. I had it on my Xbox and used to play it on Xbox Live quite a bit. It's kind of like Tetris, but it has more of a combo-rific kind of thing you can do, where you kind of chain up your little blocks and stuff and then combo it off and slam a bunch of other blocks off to the other guy. Now he has a board game just like that called Puzzle Strike, and it's similar. Basically it's kind of like a Dominion clone with a little bit more like shifting junk to the other guy, kind of like Puzzle Fighter. He also has Yomi, and then there's another game, it's escaping the name of me. But those are pretty decent games, but he is a guy that has designed games that don't really feel like video games, maybe Puzzle Strike a little bit. They feel like more like traditional card and board games, just kind of wrapped in a video game theme. So the reason I bring him up is because I'm missing out on a ton of board and card games that I think kind of hit those same synopses and whatever feelings and things that run through your brain while you're playing a video game. I think a lot of those translate into just traditional board and card games. And, in case you're stumbling on this video on YouTube one day in the future, because I'm going to post this at a bunch of board game websites, but a video gamer may see this video in the future, and he may go, oh, these are the kind of games that you get. I will mention these top 10 games, but there's also just a vast wealth of just regular card games and different things that are going to be just as engaging if you can, take the time to read through the rules and get to know the game and, learn the game. I think they're going to satisfy you in a different way, but also kind of in the same way. Let's go into the top 10, and I'm going to jump into the first category here, which is kind of like your war game. but more like a kind of a lighter war game. So I know there are some really heavy war video games out there. Company of Heroes is one that really comes to mind that I used to play and enjoyed that. And a couple other ones of that sort of World War II, or maybe some of those, there were some of those like post-apocalyptic kind of Russia invades the US, I think in that same vein of Company of Heroes. So you get a lot of troop movements, a lot of tactical things. This is kind of a lighter one. Now the cool thing about some of those PC war games, for example, is they take in a lot of the sort of minutia and fiddliness of moving pieces around and keeping track of the stats. All that's calculated for you, where in some of the heavier war board games it's not. So I think these two games are kind of a nice fit. And the first one would be Memoir 44. That's a World War II game, and there's tons of scenarios. I think anybody that loves the World War II games on the PC will be able to get right into it. It's very much familiar kind of card play. You play a card, activate a certain number of troops, and then move them, and roll some dice for combat. The base games comes with, I think, like 12 scenarios or so. I'm not sure, maybe more than that. I don't own it anymore, but it's cool because it's got like little army figures and stuff, different types of units, and so, but it plays very quickly once you set it up, which can take about 20 minutes. Then then you can play a game in about a half hour to an hour. But as you get to kind of learn the game, the play time really comes down. So that's a good one to try. Now the second one in this sort of category is Battlelore 2nd Edition. This is the same system, the same kind of core rules, but it's basically a fantasy idea here. And so you play cards to activate different types of units. Each of the units has different like abilities and stuff like that, different movement and things. But you also get kind of like a second deck of cards where you can play and do kind of magical effects and save up magical energy and play big effects and combos, kind of like your Magic the Gathering or something like that. This one is definitely my favorite in this system. It's called the Commands and Colors system, and there's tons of games in this system. There's Ancient Warfare, Napoleonic Warfare. There's even kind of a pseudo game in this system called Abaddon, which is kind of futuristic robotic warfare. That one's a kind of a little bit simplistic. It's a fun game, but compared to the others, it's really simple. So there's the two. So if you're kind of like more of a World War II guy, you can try Memoir. If you're more of a fantasy guy, or in my opinion, want a better game, I would do the Battlelore 2nd Edition. So that's kind of like, I feel like that would fit somebody that plays StarCraft, somebody that plays some of these tactical war games. These are a little bit on the simpler side, but you can sit down and play a couple of games in a couple of hours. Maybe similar to a session or a period of time that you would do playing a game on the PC or the Xbox. So the next category is going to be Myth and Galaxy Defenders, and this one to me is kind of like your RPG category. Now there's a little bit of a divide here, because if you have a strict RPG, that's going to be like your Dungeons and Dragons, your Pathfinder, role playing. We've got a Dungeon Master, he whips up everything. And then you've also got a board game version of that, like Descent, 2nd Edition is a good one of that. And then Level 7 Omega Protocol, I've heard, is a good one. I haven't played that one, or Descent. But for myself, I don't have a group or friends that, one guy's going to play the Dungeon Master and the rest of us will play the players. It doesn't work out like that. And these two games, Myth and Galaxy Defenders, have that same kind of RPG aspect to it, but the AI is controlled by the game itself. And Myth is probably the more interesting of the two, but it leaves a couple things lacking, and Galaxy Defenders for me is the better one, at least now. Myth could actually end up being the better one. Now, Myth has a lot of holes in its rules. Its rules are kind of laid out a little funky, so that it's hard to kind of reference things and catch things, because the rules are really dense. Now the cool thing about Myth is you're going to be laying out tiles, and you can kind of play through like sort of a story mode and play through kind of a set number of quests and acts and things. But you can also kind of let the game randomly derive the story out for you based on which tiles you're flipping and which quest cards you're drawing and all kinds of cool stuff. So that has one thing going for it, which is totally different than anything that I've ever seen. I've never seen anything like that, and that's awesome. The second thing is each character that you have is your kind of basic archetype, your fighter, your cleric, whatever. But each of them has a totally unique deck of cards and a totally unique way of playing with that deck of cards. So, for the most part, you're playing cards down in front of your player boards, but like the fighter, the soldier, you can lay cards down and then that will count as rage, and that's kind of like you building up threat or rage, like you think of the warrior in World of Warcraft. You build up rage to kind of generate more threat and do more damage. And then the archer guy, you've got to like manage your bows and your quivers and all that stuff, and manage your ammo pretty much. And then your healer, like you kind of play these cards like lay down and they get faith, and you get combos out of the faith, and the amount of cards that generate faith. So even just the way you play the cards is physically different, and the mechanics are different for each character, which can make it daunting. But it can also be pretty interesting because you can spend time trying to get to know that particular character and kind of invest in your character in that way. So that's interesting, and it's got cool little miniatures and everything like that. So those two aspects of the game are really nice and really unique in this kind of space here of these sort of cooperative role-playing board games. So it's very interesting. Now, one thing that they've just recently published is like a tracker to keep track of stuff, so you can kind of carry over from session to session, but there's no really like projected path for you, which I really like. And again, that's a very different thing. But Galaxy Defenders, moving over to here now, has a very sort of straightforward path that you can follow in a sense. Now, Galaxy Defenders is very much XCOM, the board game. Would you say, well, that's not really a role-playing game? But you think about it, XCOM really is a role-playing game because you're managing more than one person. It's almost like a party of characters that you're managing their stats and their loot or the weapons that they find from the aliens and things like that. So you're doing the same thing here, but it makes it very easy to kind of pop in and pop out with I'm playing this character today, somebody else can play it tomorrow, or I can just create a new character and join you guys on the 5th mission in the storybook. And the cool thing is the way the storybook works, I think there's 11 missions, but as you go through it, you can have things kind of carry over from mission to mission, and different things are going to happen. You can discover new alien weapons eventually and use them in combat back against the aliens. And there's some nice sort of flavor text woven through the storybook, so you get a sense of like what's actually happening, within the context of this universe as these aliens are invading and stuff. So that's really cool. The combat's actually really neat. It's kind of simple, and it's kind of grown on me a little bit because basically the way that each player actually sort of controls the different monsters on the board, and they don't make the decisions for them, but the order that the monsters operate is going to be based on kind of on turn order. You can go watch the reviews if you haven't played the game. So that's kind of interesting because you can kind of tactically know and get a sense for an AI kind of reacting to you. So basically, each mission is going to build up a certain deck of alien cards, a certain deck of like reaction cards. They're called encounter cards. And so you can see that, okay, so I know what's in the deck, I know what's already come. And so each scenario that you play each time, based on the way those are drawn out, the alien's going to react differently, and it's going to feel very lifelike in the fact that sometimes they're going to like really focus fire based on the very simple rules described on the alien card. It's like, okay, they're really focus firing our healer, or they're really kind of spreading the damage all over the place. So that's going to be very different in the games that they play. So I'm not going to get too much into the mechanics there, but you just have to take my word for it. But it really reacts in such a way that it feels like somebody's trying new tactics out on me each time I play the game. And the other thing, just simply, is the way the dice work for the combat is very simplistic on the face of it, but it also is very intuitive for ranged combat. And basically, the whole thing where you just roll, okay, I got hit 3 times, so that means I'm going to roll 3 defensive dice. And on the surface, I'm like, well, that was just like, what? Why did you come up with that? But then, if you think about it, it's more about the focus and the aim of the attacker versus the defender. So if I get you a lot of hits, it's really going to take a lot for you not to take at least some damage. Now you can still get, with luck of the dice, some damage maybe when you should, and not when you shouldn't, and things like that. But it really makes it very quick and easy to play in terms of resolving combat. But again, back to that encounter deck and how that's going to sort of act as the AI, that really works very well. And because you stagger the AI activations throughout the player's turn as well, very cool. I mean, very simple, but it works very, very well. So those are kind of your RPG games, but they're on the Diablo side of the RPG. They're not like on your Morrowind side, where it's kind of your epic long-term. The board games don't really have that. There is Pathfinder, the adventure card game, but I hesitate to recommend that one. But I'll just make note of that here. I do enjoy it, But the Pathfinder one also does kind of lend itself to being more of the Diablo style, because it's a very quick card game, card play kind of thing. It does persist itself across multiple quests and missions and stuff like that. And there is a very sort of long-term epic character advancement, probably more so than Galaxy Defenders or Myth. And it probably would fit the niche of somebody that wants that really sort of long, you know, almost MMO-like RPG or Morrowind-like RPG, maybe a Dragon Age kind of thing. But there isn't really a good board game yet for that, I don't think. Maybe Descent, but again, you need the DM to sort of, you know, live and do that for you. And again, once you're playing Descent, you're almost playing like your tabletop Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder, you know, role-playing game. So, but from a strict kind of board game perspective, that's kind of where you're heading, is to Descent or, you know, your regular RPG. So there you go. So the next ones are going to be, I'll just name them, Summoner Wars and Mage Wars. This is kind of really where your head-to-head sort of dueling thing happens. Now, I used to play World of Warcraft, and when I played that, probably my favorite way to play that was, I think it was the what do they call them, Battlegrounds, where you play on a team like 8 versus 8, or some of the bigger ones was insane and stupid. But you also had the arenas, which was like 2 versus 2 and 3 versus 3. And Summoner Wars and Mage Wars very much fit into that sort of arena. Now, in both games, you are basically a summoner, and it's basically me versus you, you know, one person to one person. But then I can summon other little creatures and other mages or warriors and stuff to come and do my fighting. So it's kind of like I'm controlling a little army. And it's not even an army, it's like a little squad, you know, of guys in both games. Now, they're both very different. Summoner Wars is very much simpler, kind of more in the vein of Magic the Gathering. It, you know, it plays very quickly, and you can probably play a game in about half an hour once you get to know it. And I'd say it kind of fits in that same vein as the Battle Lore and Memoir without all the setup time. Because you have sort of a tactical grid of combat and walls and things, and like a little arena. But the setup is like instantaneous. So it has that sort of, you know, idea to it. Now, Mage Wars, the setup is also instantaneous, pretty much, but there's a lot of pre-setup. Now, in Summoner Wars, you can kind of customize your warrior and your army and your deck a little bit. But in Mage Wars, you can customize it a whole ton. You actually have a spell book that you can use, and you draw cards out of a spell book and play them, and there's different types of cards. The arena, it's probably about the same size, you know, in a relative scale, but it feels a little bit bigger because it's on this large board. And there's a lot, in my opinion, a lot more variety to the things that you can do and the types of mages you can play. You can have mages that are sort of creature heavy or direct damage heavy, and maybe sort of like a I don't know how you call it, like, you know, sort of they mess with you a little bit, they root you, and they throw up vines, or they throw up different fortresses and things to sort of harass you as they kind of come around the back door. You throw up walls to kind of funnel them, or maybe take control of your creatures. So those are the ones that kind of just mess with you. They're not really about directly hitting you. So both of those, I think, really scratch that sort of dueling itch, where you get in like your World of Warcraft or some of your other battle games, where it's like the head-to-head you know, games. And we've recently seen a lot of that kind of stuff kind of become more popular. Like Warcraft itself has Hearthstone, and what are those Dota games called? You know, where you get like, you know, 4 or 5 of you going against 4 or 5 other guys, and it's almost like a little arena or battleground kind of idea. We're seeing that kind of thing. So if you really like that sort of almost twitchy, I mean, it's not twitchy obviously because it's a board game, but you feel it's twitchy. You know, it feels like reactionary and sort of very tactical style. Now, Mage Wars goes a little bit longer. It usually can get into, for new players, I'd say you'd push an hour and a half, 2 hours pretty easily. But once you get it down, it's about an hour or so. But the time goes quickly. You know, you'd be like, oh, geez, an hour and a half went by. Mage Wars is definitely one of my favorite games that I have in my collection. So, you know, that's kind of really where you get that real head-to-head combat. Yeah, you're going to get it in the other games like Battle Lore and Memoir, but this is really where it gets really kind of in your face. It's me against you kind of thing, not just like I'm kind of a general above the, you know, the fray there. So there's that. So speaking of this next thing, is basically this is your sort of StarCraft. This is your RTS category here. And there is actually a StarCraft board game, and there are actually other games that are like these, but they go a little bit on the long side. They kind of get into more of that war game side. So I kind of broke these out in their own category and basically for the quick thing, because the nice thing about these two games is the rule sets are pretty straightforward, and you know, the gameplay is really quick. It's going to be right around again in that hour range. I think most of these games that I've listed so far are going to be in the hour range, except for maybe Myth and Galaxy Defenders, which would push towards the 2 hours, depending on what kind of scenario you're playing. And then the last two after these two, definitely not in the hour range, but these are definitely in the hour range. So I think it's got that consumable thing, you know, not to stereotype the video gamer, but there's this thing of like, you know, short attention span and immediate gratification. That's fine. I don't think that's necessarily true, but if you're that kind of player, then these two games I think will fit in that category nicely. So the first, both of these in the category are Nexus Ops and BioShock Infinite. And so Nexus Ops really, to me, is very StarCrafty. Now, it has almost nothing to do with managing and micromanaging your resource production and stuff. Now, there is that stuff. You're going to capture points on the board and get resources to pump out more units and really kind of make strikes. The combat is very swingy, but again, the game only takes like an hour. And it plays really best with 4 players, but you can play it with 2 and 3 just fine. But it's very quick, you know, very dynamic, you know, very fun, just kind of super fast, almost like a filler type of game once you get into it. And you've got, you know, just different types of units that you're going to be trying to get out. Everybody's pretty much on the same page, so there's not really any balance issues. And there's some cool, interesting card play that's going to happen on top of it. It's very much like, you know, if Risk were a good game, it would probably just be Nexus Ops. So that's a very quick, easy game to get into, and, you know, really kind of a nice gateway game, I would say, for anybody that likes StarCraft or any of these other, most video games. I think people will be able to get into that, as long as they're okay with the luck of the dice, you know. I think the luck of the dice, from some of my friends that aren't board gamers or video games, would be a little bit offsetting. Because they like to feel like everything is super balanced and, you know, on this crazy, you know, teeter-totter of balance. I think it'd be okay with a little bit of luck on the dice with this one. And that goes for several of these games I've listed, I should say. So anyway, the Nexus Ops. Now the one for me that's kind of replaced Nexus Ops, along with some other games, including one I'll mention in a second, is BioShock Infinite. Now BioShock Infinite plays 2 or 4 players. You know, I don't know. I just play it with 2 players. The cool thing is not only is it based on a video game, so that's cool, and based on a very popular video game, but you play it from a different perspective, and the perspective of the antagonist and not the protagonist. So you have the 2 factions. Oh, it's escaping me now. The Vox Populi and the other faction. Can't remember the name of it, but you're basically one of those factions. And then the protagonists are in there basically harassing you, and you're trying to sort of have this sort of, you know, not a land war because it's in the city in the sky, but you're having this sort of war controlling territory, and they're coming and harassing you. You're trying to sort of manipulate them or kind of maneuver yourself into a position to score some points off of them and what they're doing and harassing people. And it's pretty, you know, it's a little bit meatier than Nexus Ops in terms of the different abilities and things that you can do. There's some other good ones in this category, Kemet and things, that I think are probably better games, but I feel like BioShock is really still very, very good. It's still on my shelf, and it's very easy to get into, and it's a very fun game. It's very quick, and again, the dice can be swingy in it, but I think that's okay. Once you get into play this game, it's very cool to kind of tinker with your special abilities and the different units, and, you know, again, with the theme. So these are kind of your sort of StarCrafty dudes on a map type of games that are strict dudes on a map. You know, not really much above and beyond the combat. Whereas like the Myth combat, the Galaxy Defenders combat, that's there, but there's also a nice RPG element on top of that. In the Memoir and the Battlelord, there's a combat, but it's more of a war kind of thing, kind of, you know, tactical troop movements. And, you know, then Summer Wars and Mage Wars, again, there's a lot of combat, kind of your video game combat thing. Everything has combat, but they're more of that head-to-head dueling thing. These are strict, like, I got a bunch of dudes, I'm going to do combat. So that's that category. The final 2, and I would say this is really heading into my love currently for Age of Wonders 3, is you have your 4X games. And now there's 2 of them. I got a Space one and then sort of your Civilization 4X. So the Space one is Eclipse, and that's a very cool game. It is very big and daunting. It's going to take a long time to play, So I would say if you're not a board gamer, this probably shouldn't be the first game that you play out of this list, but it could be, because once you get the hang of it, it helps if you have somebody to teach you. Play it, and then because it's very intuitive, and it feels very much like your Gal Civ or your Sins of a Solar Empire, which seem to be kind of popular or kind of making a comeback. You know, I remember Sins of a Solar Empire used to be pretty popular back in the day, and Gal Civ 3 is coming out. So this one is kind of right in that same vein. Now there are other games in this genre, but I think they're either way too long, like Twilight Imperium 3, which I haven't played, and I really need to play that. But that was really long. It takes like 6 to 8 hours. I don't know if it's good or bad. A lot of people think it's the greatest thing ever. This scratches that Gal Civ itch, and it's very quick to play compared to like a Twilight Imperium or even like another game which I really like, and I may like better than Eclipse, which is Hegemonic. But Eclipse it's still easy to break out. Hegemonic is a little difficult to break out with, especially with new folks, and some of the counterintuitive sort of power scoring and things. And Eclipse has a very kind of lighthearted feel. You've got just enough kind of the economic manipulation. But yeah, this is one I would definitely take a look at. It's going to be very easy to find. So the last game, and maybe my favorite game out of this list, so this is why I kind of saved this for last. Well, Mage Wars Galaxy Defenders is kind of the new hotness now. Yeah, Battlelore. I don't know. This might be my favorite game on the list. So this is Clash of Cultures, and this is your Civilization 4X game. Now, it has a lot of things that are similar to Eclipse, where you have your technology tree. Now this one has a fixed tree, whereas Eclipse sort of has a random tree. Basically certain technologies are discovered in Eclipse, and you randomly get to choose and try to snag the developments there. Where this one, everybody has the same board, and you can just kind of pick your path and go down. More like a Civ 4, Civ 5, that kind of thing. And it's set in, ancient world. You start off, you have some barbarian tribes you encounter. You build up temples and universities and all kinds of different technologies like writing and sailing and all that stuff. So it has all the Civ trappings. Now it doesn't do like Civ 5 does, where it takes you all the way up into the internet age. But it goes pretty far. It doesn't really tell you where it ends, but it kind of ends maybe in, Rome, maybe Renaissance time, I guess. It's probably, well, it's not probably, it is my favorite Civ game. And I've played a handful of Civ games. There's some more abstract games like Through the Ages and Nations where you don't even have a map, you just got a bunch of cards. Those are okay, not really, but those are alright. And I played like Sid Meier's and Tempest. I'm always forgetting one of these. I forgot. And so this is definitely my favorite out of those that I've played. It's basically, the combat's very intuitive. You have a nice sort of decision space between these handed cards that you have either to play for sort of like your, I don't know, your civilization development event versus your combat event. And so that's kind of an interesting tack that you can take. The goals you get are going to kind of slowly progress randomly. So as your Civ grows, your goal options are going to grow. So you can definitely play the game very differently, based on the movements that you do on the board, combined with the movements that you do in the tech tree versus the goals that you get dealt randomly. So the game's going to feel slightly different each time. And the cool thing is the game is very visually interesting about how you grow your buildings. Like certain cities, the way the buildings shape out on the board is very cool. And so you get a kind of a cool visual sense of what's happening, to your civilization, kind of in the story arc, from the beginning to, the end of the civilization. So that's very interesting. So if you're into these kind of 4X games, like, Age of Wonders 3, Civilization 5, Galactic Civilization, there's so many, Masters of Magic or whatever, all that stuff, Masters of Orion, that would be the one that, if you were like that, you would like Eclipse. So anyway, it's kind of a different tack, and I've been playing a lot of Age of Wonders 3, so I've been like, I should really do that one on video games. Board games that like video games. So that's kind of my list there. Hope that didn't run too long, but I kind of wanted to cover a lot of games. And, they're all very combat heavy. They're very much, a lot of them have dice chucking. But there are a lot of other style of games out there that I think, the quote-unquote video gamer would really like. That, I think a video gamer would like a game like Kalis. I mean, I do. I used to love video games, so Kalis is probably one of my all-time favorite games, but it's very dry, there's no luck. Basically, you're sort of competing to get the king's favor to build up a village in this castle. I mean, I don't know why that sounds boring to people. I think it sounds kind of interesting. It kind of reminds me of almost like a micro civilization kind of game there, where, you know, you're not building up a huge civilization, you're building up this sort of province together but against each other. So anyway, that feels like a video game to me. So anyway, so that's kind of where my you know, my reasoning sort of falls apart, and I'm willing to definitely admit that, is these are video gamer games, I think, but you know, let's take a step back. I think Kalis could work for anybody. I don't think it's really about being a video gamer. It's just more about, you know, who you are individually and all the things that make you up. So that was my stab at it. I'm sure, hopefully, I'm sure there's other videos out there like this, but so hopefully some of these will strike your fancy and you can grab one and take a look. And if you're a board gamer watching this, then you've just been listening to nothing. Okay, anyway, all right, thanks.